And we're live apparently. Hello folks out there in YouTube land. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I've got green for my sound green. Everything looks groovy. I'm on a wee bit early just to check everything's working out okay. So if anybody's out there, say hello. Let me know that you can hear me okay, if that's all right. And we'll wait till 10 o'clock just to say hi to everybody. So as I said, in the meantime, if there's anyone there, say hi. I get a sip of the old cup of Joe. I've got a great wee chapter for you tonight. It's an interesting one. There's Baked Alaska Joe saying hello. Hello, Joe. How are you doing? Hope you're keeping well. Baked Alaska Joe. I love that some people have for YouTube. And there's Traniker saying hello, Doc. You're 5x5. We're optimal. Excellent. Thank you very much, Traniker. Well, it's 10 o'clock, folks. So I'll say hello, everybody. My name is Doc Sloan. Welcome to my science fiction station here on YouTube, also known as the Doghouse. And tonight we're getting on with chapter 15 of our God Emperor of Dune book club. We're into year 4 of our 6-year journey, hopefully, to get through all the work, well, I suppose the works of Frank Herbert's Dune series, and pick it apart in exquisite detail to see what it's all about. So yeah, we're just starting to get into it, isn't it? It's a different kind of book, this one, and it's more pedestrian in some ways. When I use that term, I'm being a bit cheeky. Actually, it's the fact that we do a fair bit of walking in this book. We've got a bit of that tonight. Baked Alaska Joe says, "I am well indeed, Doc. How's you and yours?" We're good, and he says, "We're good, thanks, Baked Alaska Joe. We're not too bad. Just busy. I'm wishing we could get our house sold, pretty much. I think that's the main thing. But you know what they say about selling houses and stuff, it's all meant to be very stressful. But we just wish we could get on with it, to be honest with you. But no, we're all good. Saying that, I'm off to see the doctor tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, because I've developed what is it they call osteoarthritis in the last few weeks or so, a couple of months probably. And that's starting to bother me a wee bit, but that's just part of getting old, part of being a musician, I think, as well. Now, bear with me a wee second. I'm just trying to find my paperweight, wherever, there it is. And let me see. We quick mention out to, oh goodness, Bojack Harkness. I think I said Bojack Horseman there. Once again, thank you very much for those little checks on the chapters. One of them was me, one of them was a change in the text, actually, from chapter 13. I think we had something that didn't quite sound right. We have a different word in the... it was somebody being over his depth. Remember, we talked about it, I think. And the other text there, we actually have, he was beyond his depth. That's a wee while back, just a change of word, but the word actually didn't flow particularly well, I thought. So there we go. Thank you very much for that. Let's see. Getting old has its advantages, but for sure it is not for the weak. Well, I'll not worry about it too much. I kind of enjoy getting old, to be honest. Or older is the way I like to think of it. Are you moving far? Says that Traniker. Hopefully not. No. We have a house. We have an offer accepted on a house that we're looking at, and it's probably about 10 or 12 miles from here. But we're going to move away from the coast, I think, and get into the countryside. Pardon me, is the plan. So not too far. We sort of moved back down here from Coleraine, from Ballymoney, and we're kind of heading up back in that direction, but not into the town or anything. So hopefully, fingers crossed, as soon as possible. It takes months to organise a moving house in this country. It's a stupid practice, to be honest with you. There's not a lot of sense to it. Let me slide over here a wee bit, folks, and get me drinks out the road. Yeah, so interesting, just in terms of, very briefly, I suppose, a wee bit of housekeeping. Let me see. I made a few notes there on just what was the point of the removal of the male army next week. We had a wee bit of a chat about that last time. But just in terms of my sci-fi, what I'm watching and up to, etc., I'm just about to finish this Fall of Hyperion. I'm on page 602. and I've got another 30 pages, ends in 632 to go, and I'll have two very chunky absolute classics of science fiction. Interesting to see how many things. It's been a long time since I've read the Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion. I can't remember the last time I read them. Probably in the early noughties or something, somewhere around there, maybe a bit later. But there's a lot of similarities to the situation that we have in Dune with the Golden Path, if you like. But it's a little bit of messianic science fiction. But if anybody's not read it, by the way, Hyperion and Fall of Hyperion, it's really one book, to be honest with you. But it's amongst the best science fiction there's ever been, to be honest with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading this again. Perhaps a wee studio for the book club and recording more short stories. Well, that's the plan, actually, and more videos. I've got my Batraco Myomachia done at the minute. Baked Alaska Joe, and I'm just it's a nightmare to edit. So I'm still editing it. Would you believe it's? But we're getting there with it. But as much as some of these things have been wee vanity projects for me, like the Batraco Myomachia, the real goal is to kind of bring you some science fiction, a little bit of fantasy and horror, and maybe the odd classic stuff as well. So we're hoping to get back to recording some more interesting and obscure science fiction that might be notable for you. And the other thing is, in fact, I was going to put up a wee poll on the channel tonight, actually, just to all ask you, because I'm going to start doing my Doc Sloan's A to Z of science fiction to get us out of Frank Herbert's universe and just into sci-fi in general. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. It's something that I can do on the fly with a little bit of prep. So what I'm hoping, I'm probably set this up actually tomorrow or something. Do a wee poll just to see what night most people would prefer to see me on here. If you're interested, Thursday nights are pretty much reserved for the book club. But if I had to pick another night to do another show during the week, what would it be? And I'm just curious what would suit. What do you think? Maybe you might all agree on a particular night or something. Could be just get a 7 completely different. All 7 nights suit everybody out there. Every night. Well, that's good to know, Tranniger. Pardon me, folks. But yeah, I'm going to start with the naughties. Or with the naughties, is that the right word? How would we put it? We're going to start with the numbers. So before we get to A, we're going to hit all the science fiction that we can, film, book, audio, you name it, any kind of science fiction. We're going to start with the numbers. So we're going to have the first episode is going to look at things like 2001, 2010, the original story behind those Arthur C. Clarke tales, which is called The Sentinel. I think I've got the worlds. Is it the worlds of 2001 here or something like that? That's an old one, isn't it? Bear with me a second. Just do a quick scan. There it is. There we are. That's the one there. There we go. And we've also got this interesting little book, which some of you might know about, some of you might not. This is Arthur C. Clarke's The Lost Worlds of 2001. The ultimate book of the ultimate trip, 2001: A Space Odyssey. So this is more. It's quite an interesting thing. I suppose I'm actually going to have to reread it, or at the very least, flick through it. But it's an interesting book. I'll just read you the blurb on it. The ultimate trip started with a story called The Sentinel by Arthur C. Clarke. It took flight when Stanley Kubrick asked Clarke to write a novel of space exploration. The result was one of the most extraordinary films of all time. Now, for the first time, the reader is taken on every stage of this great adventure. Here is the original story and the interplay between two brilliantly charged imaginations. This is Arthur C. Clarke's own intimate account of the unique chemistry between author and director, which created 2001: A Space Odyssey. So we'll have a wee look at the 2001, that series by Arthur C. Clarke, the films and the books. And we'll explore that a little bit more. And then I think we have a couple of other things that we can look at, like 300, for example. And but we're going to take a good look at 2000 AD in the first episode, because we've got a Rogue Trooper film dropping next month. I think actually it might be June or July. Bear with me a wee second. Which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. It's being directed by Duncan Jones. It's coming in at 2 hours 3 minutes. It's animated. Release date? Do we have a release date? Let's see, June 2026. So next, I suppose, yeah, we're about to hit May. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Actually, is having a look at Rogue Trooper, which would have been one of 2080's flagship stories, if you like, one of the biggies. Hugely important character, very interesting character, a great set of storylines, and a great universe actually. So it'll be interesting to see how that's done, you know. So yeah, if anybody's not aware of Rogue Trooper, if you haven't read 2080, you've probably never heard of it. Rogue Trooper is a very good sort of extension into future war from the old British comics that used to, things like Valiant and Commandos, particularly the World War One comics, and World War Two comics. And it's taken that and set it in a kind of North versus South, very kind of arbitrary war on a planet called New Earth, which has been hit so bad with chemical and biological warfare that normal humans can't actually breathe on it. And so Rogue Trooper is a genetically engineered soldier who can exist in any kind of environment, if you like. Has a great, the initial story is pretty good with the Quartz Massacre and stuff like that. It's got a good, how would we put it? What's the term I'm looking for? It's a good genesis actually for the character. It's a good opening story. So really looking forward to that. And if anybody hasn't heard of Rogue Trooper, I've quite enjoyed some of Duncan Jones's films so far. He's done a couple of sci-fi movies. Check it out when it comes out. It's a really good, interesting character. Though they've removed his white eyes, it looks like they've given him normal eyes. And I have a wee. Let me see, just to show you. You'll probably know from science fiction or science fiction station that are my little logo. Let me see. There we go. Can you see it? I don't know. Doubt it very much. There's my biochip there. The little skull that you see with the joint in its mouth is a Rogue Trooper biochip. So the idea is when a soldier is killed, they can remove the chip from his head, preserve their personality, and slot it into a piece of equipment until the character can be regened, if you like, respawned, for want of a better term. And so the story of Rogue Trooper follows Rogue, as he's known, and three of his companions who are dead. One inserted into his helmet, one inserted into his gun, and one inserted into his backpack. So they're known as Gunner, Helm, and Bagman. And it's a great story. It went all sorts of places in 2080. Eventually, it got a reboot that was not as good at all, with another Rogue Trooper called Friday. We have a few interesting female characters in there. We've got Venus Blue Jeans as well. So I can't wait to see it. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hoping it has some of the old 2080 sensibilities, you know. Let's see. Big Glass says, perhaps we studio for the book club and recording more short stories. Yes, indeed. Every night. Hi, Doc. Hi, all, says Cynthia. How you doing, Cynthia? Thanks for joining us. And Tiger saying November 3, 1963. I don't love King, but that was a great one. I think somebody lent me that. I think it's here. I never got a chance to read it. I never got a chance to hand it back either. That's bad. I'll have to do something about that. Big Glasgow Joe says sci-fi Sunday, horror Monday, drama Tuesday, comedy Wednesday, June Thursday, classics Friday, leave your Saturday off. That could be interesting. Big Glasgow Joe saying hi, Cynthia. I find reading King way harder than watching his adaptations on screen. So they saying hi, Joe. I've never really liked his writing, to be honest with you. I've only read a couple of his novels. I've read The Talisman and his Eyes of the Dragon, I think. Pardon me. And I read a long time ago, I read the Bachman books, which I enjoyed more than, I think he's too lengthy for me. But I just always got the sense that nothing really happened in Stephen King books. Just too much reading to get anywhere, you know. So he's never been someone who particularly interested me. But I like my horror old-fashioned, if you like. So, Edgar Allan Poe, that kind of stuff, you know. But yes, indeed, we'll have to see. As I said, we'll put up a wee poll, but just to figure out when I'm free during the week, and it should be an easy-going thing. And I'll say we can introduce you to all sorts of science fiction. Not have to go nuts in it and look at it in the depth that we're doing the God Emperor of Dune or anything, but we can have a bit of a chat about it and point out stuff that's on people's radar, stuff that's popular, stuff that's really obscure, stuff that's absolutely par excellence as well. There's some really good odd science fiction floating around that people just don't really know much about, sometimes including myself. Well, here we go, folks. Let's get cracking with our book club. I always give these a wee bit of a title. I'm not too sure what I put on the channel, but on this one I've written Trotting with Leto, and I've also written Geography in this chapter, which I think is really important. I'll explain why, because we're going to jump back in a minute to something that the God Emperor has said previously, 3 chapters back actually. So we'll just have a wee look at the epigraph first. What is the most profound difference between you and me? You already know it. It's these ancestral memories. Mine come out at me in the full glare of awareness. Yours work from your blind side. Some call it instinct or fate. The memories apply their leverages to each of us on what we think and what we do. You think you're immune to such influences. I am Galileo. I stand here and tell you, yet it moves. That which moves can exert its force in ways no mortal power ever before dared stem. I am here to dare this. The stolen journals, again, Leto's own words, more hyperbole, very much. And he's I am Galileo, one of the many people in his other memory that we have to make an assumption to a degree must be an ancestor of Leto II's. Galileo. Now, Galileo da Vincenzo Buonaiuti di Galileo, 1564 to 1642. I'm sure most of you know who he is, astronomer and polymath, etc., but Italian, born in Pisa, and really famous for the quote that's, oddly enough, actually, I wouldn't say that, but I tend to think of him more as the thing that I know him most for is the Galilean satellites, but of Jupiter. But it's this yet it moves. The original phrase is "e pur si muove," which is and yet it moves. And it's not actually believed to have been spoken by him at all, which is interesting because I thought up until doing this program tonight, I thought it was his own words, but apparently the phrase is not known to have existed until after his death, I believe. Let me just quickly have a wee nosy here for you. Bear with me a second. Here we go. According to popular legend, after recounting his theory that the Earth moved around the sun, Galileo muttered the rebellious phrase, "and yet it moves." The earliest known written account of the legend dates to a century after his death. Supporting the legend was a claim that a 1640s painting by the Spanish painter Bartolomé Esteban Murillo, or an artist of his school, in which the words were hidden until restoration work in 1911, depicts an imprisoned Galileo apparently gazing at the words "e pur si muove," written on the wall of his dungeon. Based on the painting, Stillman Drake wrote that there's no doubt now that the famous words were already attributed to Galileo before his death. However, an intensive investigation by astrophysicist Mario Livio concludes that the supposed Murillo painting is most probably much more recent, a copy of an 1837 Flemish painting. There you go. I always like these little things. So whether he said it or not, quite possibly not. Who knows? He might well have done, But in this case, we can never be sure. So the epigraph here is about the influence of memory on what you do and what you think. Everything that we do Everyone that we encounter um, affects us in a way, doesn't it? Some things greater, some things lesser, but every little thing that sort of comes into our sensory awareness changes us on some way. Leto intends to exert his force in ways no one has ever dared. His memory will influence you. I've put down who this is addressed to as a wee note here, because yours. Um, difference between you and me, you already know it. Yours, so yours isn't everybody else. Yours work from your blind side. This is your ancestral memories. So I get a sense possibly that we're not aware of them, that kind of thing. It's an odd little epigraph, I suppose, and it is dropping this, I suppose, this rebellious statement that's associated with Galileo. And if we go with the story, this is what he says after he recounts his statements about the heliocentric nature of the solar system, this kind of thing. Right. Okay, so let's get cracking. When she was a child, this is Leto speaking, by the way. When she was a child, she watched me. Remember? When she thought I was not aware, Shanna watched me like the desert hawk which circles above the lair of its prey. You yourself mentioned it. Leto rolled his body a quarter turn on his cart while speaking. This brought his cowled face close to that of Moneo, who trotted beside the cart. Pardon me. Shanna watched me like a desert hawk there. I've just made a wee note underneath that. She is a predator. Just in terms of the God Emperor's thinking. Let's see. So here we go. It was barely dawn on the desert road which followed the high artificial ridge from the Citadel in the Sarir to the festival city. The road from the desert ran laser beam straight until it reached this point where it curved widely and dipped into terraced canyons before crossing the Idaho River. The air was full of thick mists from the river tumbling in its distant clamor, but Leto had opened the bubble cover, which sealed the front of his cart. The moisture made his worm's self tingle with vague distress, but there was the smell of sweet desert growth in the mist, and his human nostrils savored it. He ordered the cortege to stop. Now, I've written just at the top of this, and it's just what I've called this chapter, really, in my own notes, just little things to help me. Geography. And I've made a wee note here, chapter 12, note 13 of God Emperor of Dune. So let's jump back just to explain this a wee bit. Chapter 12, note, what do we say there? 13, right. So this is going back a few chapters, where we have this bit. Actually, it talks about a Dune hawk at this point as well. What a strange thing those were to the old Fremen and him. Clouds on Arrakis and rain and open water. Leto reminded the inner voices, except for the last desert, my Sarir, the remodeling of Dune into verdant Arrakis has gone on remorselessly since the first days of my rule. The influence of geography on history went mostly unrecognized, Leto thought. Humans tended to look more at the influence on history on geography. So it was to this that I was kind of alluding to. What we're getting here, this is going to be tricky to explain this. I'm not too sure how to do possible spoiler warning, we'll say. So if anybody doesn't want to know, but the geography that we're getting described here is very important. Important to, I suppose, what we were saying about the pedestrian nature of this, that we're walking along, where we walk to back and forth between the Citadel and the festival city, etc. All of these details here, geography, it's very important to what happens at the end of the story, I suppose, without giving anything away. So we have the desert road. It follows the high artificial ridge from the Citadel and the Sarir to the festival city. The road runs laser beam straight up until a point where it curves widely and dips into terraced canyons before it crosses the Idaho River. And so we get this out, air being full of mist from the river, etc., which gives the worm a little bit of vague distress here. But Leto is enjoying the smell of the sweet desert growth. Is human, so the human half of him is enjoying this, and the worm half is distressed. Vague distress. This is Moneo. Why are we stopping, Lord? Moneo asked. Leto did not answer. The cart creaked as he heaved his bulk into an arching curve which lifted his head and allowed him to look across the forbidden forest to the Cine Sea, glistening silver far off to the right. He turned left, and there were the remains of the shield wall, a sinuous low shadow in the morning light. The ridge here had been raised almost 2,000 meters to enclose the Sarir and limit airborne moisture there. From his vantage, Leto could see the distant notch where he had caused the festival city of On to be built. Pardon me. So more geography there. A little bit of name dropping. We've actually got Idaho, I suppose, Duncan Idaho heading towards a river that's named after him. That must be odd. The Forbidden Forest, what a wonderfully alliterative name. And the Cine Sea. So you could see the distant notch where he had caused the festival city of On to be built. So what I've written here next to this is, as much as we were talking about geography and history, and that Leto controls the narrative, whether it be oral history, written reports, government reports, actual history, you name it. Here we also have Leto having control of the landscape. He has crafted all of this. That's how I put it. I wasn't too sure best how to put it there. Bear with me a wee second, just to jump back here again. Yeah, that comment just before where we were talking about the influence of geography on history. Except for this last desert, my Sarir, the remodeling of Dune into verdant Arrakis has gone on remorselessly since the first day of my rule. This is it. This is what he's been at. And it's completely changed the landscape of Arrakis. We're getting to see, we don't really get to see too much of the planet. I suppose what we're seeing is a microcosm of the macrocosm. Same way I suppose we don't really get to see too much of the rest of the universe here. It's all our focus is on this specific area of geography. Pardon me. And it's familiar. I suppose that the interesting thing is, one of the things that I've always thought was an absolute pity is that we don't get an update of the actual books as we read them. So once we're out of Dune, the first Dune novel, there's no more terminology of the Imperium at the back, which would always be useful to a reader, I think. But there's no more maps either. And I think it would be interesting just to see how the geography, not that it's a particularly detailed map, how the geography of Dune has changed. Just in terms of the map, etc., where things are, how they've changed, different locations, different names, etc. No, actually, hang on. I just noticed something very odd here. Bear with me a second. Goodness. Right. Wow. I just noticed something really bizarre. Let me check the back of the book. It's at the back of the book. I was going to say this book's got no map of Arrakis, but it's at the back of the book. It's usually at the front. Yeah, the OH gap. Arrakis. Yeah, just having a wee nosy. It's a pity. Sorry, I'm probably creating a bit of dead air there, folks. I'll just catch up with your comments. Let's see. Baked Alaska Joe says, funny enough, from where I sit, I can see the river between my state, was it WA? What's that? Is that Washington? And the state of Idaho. Is there an Idaho River? That's rivers. Snake River. List of rivers of Idaho. Well, looks like there's plenty. No. Excuse me, I'm very bad with American geography, the state abbreviations. So I do apologize. I was just looking at the Snake River there. Is that the same one as the Snake River Canyon? Evel Knievel did a jump there, didn't he? If I'm mistaken. But I don't see an Idaho River there. But that's interesting. We've our geography here. We just have the river band. River band is about 50 meters from the house here. Is the notch in the shield wall we're on is the same place that Paul breached with atomics in Dune, says Cynthia. This is what I'm trying to figure out here. I think so. Can't see glass and silver off the right. Turn left and there were the remains of the shield wall. A ridge had been raised almost 2,000 meters to enclose it and limit airborne moisture. There, from his vantage, Leto could see the distant notch where he caused the festival city of Ulm to be built. I think we might get a little bit more on it, but that's what I'm trying to figure out. What's where? We're very very close. Sorry, to Arrakis, to Arrakis, I believe. I think I don't know. We got something on previously, isn't it? It's yeah, On's on top. It's supposed to be built on top of Arrakis, I believe. So, which is pretty much within the shield wall, isn't it? So, is the notch in the shield wall we're on is the same place that Paul breached with atomics in June? Yeah, I think it's. I believe so. I think it's where the gap where the sandworms came in. Arrakis rim wall west altitude. We have an OH gap. I'm trying to figure out what that means. Just on the original map, the Dorothy de Fontaine map that's in June. Then sometimes that's Arrakis. There's the shield wall. It's very hard to get a sense of this map, isn't it? It's not one of my favorite ones. As maps go in books, I'm a big fan of maps. Got a giant map of Middle Earth in the sitting room there, you know. But I believe so, Cynthia. I think it's where the breach of the shield wall and the worms, where the worms came in. I think that's the location of Ulm, which means it's just right next to Arrakis, isn't it? So they said, Joe, I grew up in Portland, or I'm going to go with Oregon there, where I could see the Columbia River and WA, is that Washington? Beyond, lovely area of the country. Baked Alaska Joe says, I was just wondering the same thing. Portland is so beautiful. Heck, the entire PNW is awesome in my opinion. There's Chaya Rivka saying, Shalom all. Shalom Chaya, how you doing? Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us as always. I hope you're safe and on the mend. Excuse my teeth whistling a bit tonight. They'll be getting out of control. This river is called the Snake. That's when I was a kid, Baked Alaska Joe. In fact, I bought this book not too long ago. I was a big fan of Evel Knievel. In fact, our little dog Noodles is actually called Evil Noodles, but she's an Evelyn Noodles. And the book, it was his biography. And I wonder, is it sitting here somewhere? I wouldn't have known where I would have put it. It's about somewhere. I picked it up on Bargain Books not too long ago, and the book that I read when I was a kid had Evel Knievel doing I think it was a rocket car or something, the jump, and the book ended with just kind of him going down, and there was a photograph of the car going down into the Snake River Canyon, I think it was called. And that was it. For a long time, I thought Evil Knievel, as a little, I read this when I was about 4 or 5, believe it or not. I thought he died down there, that the snakes got him. Being Irish, I don't have a particular fondness for snakes. But that was if that's the Snake River Canyon, if that's what we're thinking of, that's where he did that jump. Then many years later, not too long back, um, I think it was in Bargain Books, and I saw the Evil Knievel book. I went, "Oh, that's the book I bought when I was a kid." And had a wee just nostalgic flick through it. I ended up buying it because the book went on. Obviously, he had a good, plenty of more things to do after that, and it wasn't a complete biography. And the book that I bought, kind of where the original one ended, there was about half more of a book to go. So I was kind of quite pleased to see that he didn't die. But there you go. Yeah, America's gorgeous, isn't it? You've got such a range of, I suppose, environments. You've got deserts, you've got forests, you've got everything there. You're basically a continent, aren't you? But America looks very, very pretty, I have to say. Not that I've ever been. River's called the Snake. Yeah, the Armain River here is the River Bann. It flows down into Loch Ness. It's a dangerous little river, actually. It flows out into what we call the Barmouth there, just up at the top. That's into the Portrush, Port Stewart kind of area, and then we have around the Giant's Causeway. Big Alaska Joe saying, "Howdy, Chaya. Hello, Chaya from Cynthia." And Big Alaska Joe saying, "Yes, evil noodles." That's right, laughing at this. She was noodles initially, and then she ate whenever we first got her. She ate the handbrake off my car when I nipped into the shop, and the car started to roll away. And that's how she got the name Evil. But then we ultimately decided that she wasn't that evil, and she was a good wee girl. And we decided that we called her Evil Noodles for quite some time. So we made it Evelyn, and the Evil was short for Evelyn. That's her name. She's a handful. Our Noodles, yes, indeed. She's a singular dog with a plural name. Baked Alaska Joe is saying America is very pretty. Yes, it is. There's also, I'd love to get to America sometime. My wife's been there. She enjoyed it. I don't know. It's like there's so many places I'd like to go to. I'd like to get out to places like Israel and Greece, and I've been to Italy. But Greece and I don't know that a lot of the places I want to go to are very dangerous these days, but it's just parts of the ancient world and stuff. But I'd love to go to America. I'd love to see Canada. Alaska looks very pretty as well. I don't travel particularly well, I'm afraid. But yeah, it's a gorgeous country. It's so big as well. But yeah, what was it? I don't know what you call it. Is it Death Valley? I might be the wrong place with all those kind of. I don't know. I used to watch Airwolf when I was a kid, and he have his helicopter parked in something like that. Used to always think that place looks amazing. But Ireland's a particularly beautiful country too here, but it's a bit miserable in the winter. But it's just bloody wet. But weather here today has been gorgeous. Lovely day today. Alaska is like nowhere else on Earth, says at Trenaker. Baked Alaska Joe says, I lived in Alaska for 5 years. Wow. Trenaker saying, I've been all over North America, and Alaska just defies the eye. And Chaya saying, happy to show you around Israel when you come. Thank you, Chaya. I've promised the wife that that's what I think we were chatting to you about it before. Places that I'd love to go and see, but number one on the list before I can go anywhere is Greece. I've got to get to Greece before I kick the bucket, basically. I've been to Rome and done the Roman stuff, but it's just part of who I am. I've got to get to Greece at some point. Spent too much of my life invested in that place not to go near it. But yeah, Alaska looks absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I love that. I love impressive landscapes. It's something I don't know, come to appreciate more as you get older. I think just how beautiful the world is. Goodness, I don't get out that much. We were out a few weeks back heading around the coast, up towards the Glens of Antrim. I stuck a wee photograph up there, Cushion Doll. I just couldn't believe, why am I not out here more often? It's just beautiful. Oh, pardon me, and yeah, we got so many old, just even where we were up that weekend, so many old ruins, like an old friary and all sorts of stuff that litter the landscape around here that make it very dramatic in some cases, but very, very beautiful. But yeah, America looks I don't know, every country has its charms, I think. But yeah, that'd be great. Chai, if we ever get out there, thank you very much. Baked Alaska Joe saying, Trinica, you're absolutely right about Alaska. Baked Alaska, when you come to USA, remember Washington State has a Herbert Park. Yeah, absolutely. America's always struck me as the sort of place that if you were going there on holiday, you need to take a bit of time. But I don't know. It's to me, it would be the sort of place you'd want to travel across rather than. I wouldn't want to stay in one city. I'd want to see a bit of the place. There's just too much to see. But you've got your Great Lakes and is it the Sierra Nevada? Is that what they're called? The Sierra Nevada Mountains? Let me see. Yeah, Sierra Nevada is a mountain range. That looks absolutely lovely. I don't know. I love big mountains and big forest parks and stuff like that. I love a good bit of dramatic scenery. There's Julian saying, "Hey y'all, hey Doc, how you doing, Julian? Thanks for joining us. Good to see you." Big Alaska Joe saying, "Hi, Julian." Yeah, we're not too far in, Julian. We're just sort of piling. We're having a chat about local geography. But yeah, it would be very interesting. Just of the thing, I try to do little maps and stuff within this. I suppose, and I have a smaller one that we had at the start with the wolf chase, didn't we? That I kind of did a little map out of the terrain there. I just doodled it as it was described. But I could maybe try and draw out something a bit larger with this description here. But the geography that we're getting in this chapter is crucial, I think, to later on. And as I said, the wee point I wanted to make out here was just that Leto has crafted this landscape. He's deconstructed it and reconstructed it. So let's see, where were we? From his vantage, Leto could see the distant notch where he had caused the festival city of Ulm to be built. This is Leto. It's a whim which stops me, Leto said. Shouldn't we cross the bridge before resting? Moneo asked. I am not resting. We get more geography here now. Leto stared ahead. After a series of switchbacks, which were visible from here only as a twisting shadow, the high road crossed the river on a ferry bridge, climbed to a buffer ridge, and then sloped down to the city, which presented a vista of glittering spires at this distance. A little bit reminiscent of Oz to me, as in the city. Glittering spires, this kind of thing. Follow your yellow brick road in a kind of way. Not that this is a yellow brick road. Interesting that we have the use of the term ferry bridge here. Oddly enough. No, ferry bridge not to be. All right, there's a couple. There's one on the Isle of Man. There's one on the Isle of Skye. But I don't think it's from any particular. We've got that funny spelling of ferry, don't we? There, Faery. I don't think it has any particular. We've things like fairy circles and fairy stones here and stuff like that, but I don't ever recall hearing of a fairy bridge. But I'm guessing that the term here is just descriptive, really, that there's something perhaps ethereal, fairy-like, fine, elven, maybe, if you like, about sort of things that you might see sort of bridges you might see in Lord of the Rings leading into Rivendell. Oh, that reminds me, actually. Hang on. I don't think it is the ferry bridge, but do we have a drawing on one of the covers of Dune, God Emperor of Dune? Bear with me a second. Where did you go? There you are. Oh, that's Heretics. There we are. No, I don't think this is particularly it, but I always like this drawing. Anyway, let's see if I can get it up close there. From God Emperor of Dune. I really like this artist's work. It's a real shame when you commission somebody with that kind of talent. I don't know, can you see it better? Not really. There's the moon. No, you can see more of it on the front. You can cover illustration by Robert Nichols. Well, yeah, I suppose maybe one of the lesser known Dune artists, but very, very good. If I had a picture like that, I'd put it all over the book. Well, just create a little window for it. You know. But yeah, ferries, ferry bridge, ferry, an association probably with ferries, that kind of thing. Ferries are a bit funny in this country. They're, how would you put it? I'm trying to get her saying yes, the Sierra Nevadas. Yeah, I'd love to see those. We don't really have much big. There's no real big mountains in Ireland at all. Our biggest mountains aren't that big. You know, we're much more of a hilly country. Scotland would be more mountainous, you know. So I love seeing a really impressive mountain. The biggest I've seen was flying over the Alps, I suppose, you know. Let's see. Yeah, ferry bridges. I just thought it's an odd term. And we don't really get much more on it. Ferry is a term in this country, I suppose. We've talked a wee bit about the Roman interpretation and the British interpretation. In this country, we very much have the Roman interpretation of Christianity, and how it kind of what's the word, I suppose, assimilated and corrupted a lot of our cultural stories. So relegating our mythological beings from huge elven type warriors, if you like, down to wee fairy folk. This kind of thing is part of that corrosion of our culture, sadly. Whereas people who were once considered giants became wee folk, the little folk and all this kind of stuff. But fairies, yeah, I remember finding a fairy stone. I think I told you about it once, maybe if you if you were here to listen. But I found a fairy stone in the river whenever my aunt was visiting from Australia, and I gave it to her. It was a little stone with a perfect hole eroded through it by the water. So it's an interesting term. The high road crossed the river on a ferry bridge, climbed to a buffer ridge, and then sloped down to the city, which presented a vista of glittering spires at this distance. There is something kind of fairy tale about it, isn't it? This kind of it almost seems on as magical. And I wonder about how much of this construction of the journey to this place is part of, I suppose, the mystique and the cult of the fish speakers. We were talking about the shared experiences that they had that will be partly at the festival city of Ulm. So the Duncan, this is Leto here. Enough geography. The Duncan acts subdued, Leto said. Have you had your long conversation with him? Precisely as you required, Lord. Well, it's only been 4 days, Leto said. They often take longer to recover. So the chat that we've had with between Duncan, the very heavy kind of talk about sexuality in the army, male armies and female armies and stuff in the previous chapter has all been as the requirements of Lord Leto. Almost everything that we're seeing is kind of being is his responsibility. He does all these things. It's only been 4 days, Leto said. They often take longer to recover. He has been busy with your guard, Lord. They were out until late again last night. The Duncans do not like to walk in the open. They think about the things which could be used to attack us. I know, Lord. Leto turned and looked squarely at Moneo. The major domo wore a green cloak over his white uniform. He stood beside the open bubble cover, exactly in the place where duty required that he station himself on these excursions. So again, duty, right, and ritual, if you like. There's a specific spot that Moneo must stand, and he does so. And Leto notes, I suppose, this. You're very dutiful, Moneo, Leto said. Thank you, Lord. Guards and courtiers kept themselves at a respectful distance, well behind the cart. Most of them were trying to avoid even the appearance of eavesdropping on Leto and Moneo. Not so, Idaho. I really like that. I think that's a good phrase. Not so, Idaho. Um, if I was telling off Duncan Idaho as the God Emperor, I think that would be a phrase that I would use quite a lot. I just liked it, just me. Not so, Idaho. He had, I'll do that properly. Not so, Idaho. He had positioned some of the fish speaker guards at both sides of the Royal Road, spreading them out. Now he stood staring at the cart. Idaho wore a black uniform with white piping, a gift of the fish speakers, Moneo had said. They like this one very much. He is good at what he does. What does he do, Moneo? Why, guard your person, Lord. The women of the guard all wore skin-tight green uniforms, each with a red Atreides hawk at the left breast. They watch him very closely, Leto said. Yes, he is teaching them hand signals. He says it's the Atreides way. That is certainly correct. I wonder why the previous one didn't do that. That's a good question. Just to back up a wee bit, I suppose they like this one very much. He is good at what he does. I've written next to that, as opposed to the other Duncans. So it's the fact that he's taking guarding the God Emperor seriously. That they seem to appreciate him. They've given him a gift of a nice uniform. Guard your person. The women of the guard all wore skin-tight green uniforms, each with a red Atreides hawk at the left breast. I thought that was interesting. I've just written down chromatic aberration, male color blindness. Is about 8% of men are colorblind in red and green. It's only about 0.4% of women. Don't hold me to those figures, but they're close enough. It's just anytime I see green and red, it makes me think of color blindness. There's a comment coming up later, pardon me, about I suppose the environment that we're in, more to do with the courtiers and how they're dressed. And I would just, whenever we get to that comment, I would like to point out that the fact that the guard are all wearing skin-tight green uniforms with a red Atreides hawk at the left breast over the heart, and I don't know, but green goddess, isn't it? But would also suggest to me that the skin-tight uniforms are highly impractical in this weather. But we'll find out, I suppose. So he is teaching them hand signals. He says it's the Atreides way. That is certainly correct. I wonder why the previous one didn't do that. I suppose the other question we could ask is, are any of the other previous ones? Pardon me. I think we can assume that if one Duncan Idaho was commanding the fish speaker guards, trained them to do something, that training would stay. You know, I don't see why it wouldn't, to be honest with you. And having a private silent communication system, these signals would be is very useful. Military, police, all sorts of things, you know. So Leto says, that is certainly correct. I wonder why the previous one didn't do that. Lord, if you don't know, I jest, Moneo. The previous Duncan did not feel threatened until it was too late. Has this one accepted our explanations? So I'm told, Lord. He is well started in your service. Pardon me. So, I suppose the other previous Duncan didn't feel threatened. This one must feel threatened in some way. And I thought it was interesting the way the sentence ended there. Has this one accepted our explanations? So I'm told, Lord. So again, the explanations that the Duncan Idaho is being given to his situation, life in the universe, all of that kind of thing, what the heck's going on, again, kind of stem from the God Emperor. And at this point, even though we're not too far into the book, he really isn't to be trusted at all. I think he's certainly an unreliable narrator, which makes our job a bit more difficult, I suppose. Unreliable narrators are, pardon me, great, a great way of telling a story. Um, Oh, my coffee's gone cold. That's disgusting. No, switch to juice. Pardon me. A great one is Severn in Book of the New Sun. He's an unreliable narrator. Similar character to the God Emperor, ultimately. But when you've got an unreliable narrator and you're aware of it, I suppose in the Book of the New Sun, it's quite interesting because you're not really aware of it, even though the character tells you. If I'm not mistaken, he plays with you, but I suppose that the point I'm trying to make is whenever you've got an unreliable narrator, not everything they tell you is unreliable. Some of it is, but we've got to try and figure out what's the truth and what's not the truth, if you see what I mean. And I think we're well into that game with the God Emperor. What is he, particularly with the histories, the oral traditions, official reports, and even just down to a casual chat, but over breakfast between Moneo and Leto, his hand is there always. The landscape that we're walking around in, that we're inhabiting, that's changed so much from the first three books. It's his hand that has made these changes. There's carved out this kind of long, straight and then long winding path and through these kinds. We've got the forest, the sea, etc. All of it is at his hand. And I think the other little thing that we get here is Leto asks a question. I wonder why the previous one didn't do that. Moneo's response, if you don't know, I suppose if you don't know, who does, is one of those things that would suggest a lack of godhood, isn't it? But Leto covers up by saying, I'm joking. I jest, Moneo. Just joking. Again, he's asking questions that we kind of, don't you know if you're God, this kind of thing. But we already know he's not. So I'm told, Lord, he is well started in your service. Why is he carrying only that knife in the belt sheath? I've wanted to scream at that. I thought that the syntax in that sentence was awful. The women have convinced him that only the specially trained among them should have las guns. So I think this is to do with the previous Duncan and the las gun, as we'll find out. And I also wrote down here, why not a Molo pistol, for example, or something? A small firearm or something like that. Your caution is groundless, Moneo. Tell the women that it's much too early for us to begin fearing this one. Fear always gets a big word, fear. There we go, in my notes, because it is the mind killer, and we should pay attention to it. They're a little bit afraid of the Duncans in case they try to attack their god. But it's a little too early for us to begin fearing this one. And us there's Moneo, the fish speaker's Leto himself, as my lord commands. It was obvious to Leto that his new guard commander did not enjoy the presence of the courtiers. He stood well away from them. Most of the courtiers, he had been told, were civic functionaries. They were decked out in their brightest and finest for this day, when they could parade themselves in their full power and in the presence of the God Emperor. Leto could see how foolish the courtiers must appear to Idaho, but Leto could remember far more foolish finery, and he thought that this day's display might be an improvement. So I think that's a reference to some kind of foppish courtiers, if you like, of some previous king, one of the Louis, perhaps, one of the British kings, one of the George III or Louis XIV, this kind of thing, surrounded by foppish aristocrats and dandies and rakes and this kind of thing. So Leto sees that his courtiers and how they're decked out, if you like, is an improvement upon some of them in the past. Now, here we go. This is Leto. Have you introduced him to Shanna? Leto asked. At the mention of Shanna, Moneo's brow congealed into a scowl. He's not happy about this. Calm yourself, Leto said. Even when she spied on me, I cherished her. I sense danger in her, Lord. I think sometimes she sees into my most secret thoughts. The wise child knows her father. I do not joke, Lord. Yes, I can see that. Have you noticed that the Duncan grows impatient? They scouted the road almost to the bridge, Moneo said. What did they find? The same thing I found, a few museum fremen. Another petition? Do not be angry, Lord. Once more, Leto peered ahead. This necessary exposure to the open air, the long and stately journey with all of its ritual requirements to reassure the fish speakers, all of it troubled Leto. And now, another petition. So don't be angry, Lord Leto. And now another petition with a big exclamation mark on it. It seems to suggest that these petitions do make him angry. Sorry, just want to scribble something down here. And of course, when Leto gets angry, he's like, you wouldn't like him when he's angry, would you? He becomes the worm. The worm takes over. Tranniker said, is Leto just disempowering and making unnecessary everyone around him? This is also at Tranniker. It reminds me of the scene in Kingdom Come involving the humans walking by a pawn shop with the last World Series ball now meaningless since humans don't need to achieve anything if superheroes can't. Always bails them out. Yeah, we're getting that sense that it's a pedestrian world, isn't it? That everyone's a bit dull. There's no real excitement. Everything's controlled. Peaceful, I suppose. What is it the thing that he's really looking for? I'm trying to remember the term I'm looking for. I suppose he's looking to be interested, isn't he? It's a universe that he's created. Where even the landscape here has been constructed by him. I don't know. It's a tricky thing. It's people sort of kept in their place. There's a stagnation about this society, isn't there? That I think is a repetition of the stagnation of the universe that it was in at the start of Dune. And I think this stagnation is what we're going to have Shanna rebel against, this kind of thing, you know. But that's a very interesting comment, Tranniker. Disempowering and make unnecessary everyone around him. Yeah. In a sense, I don't know, I do get that. It's like, what was it? A wee while back, there was a bit of a snarky comment between the Emperor and Moneo. And I think it was something like, Moneo, would you leave something for me to do? There has to be something. I think he's struggling with boredom. As I said, pedestrian is, I'm using that word on a number of different levels. This book is a bit pedestrian compared to the pacing of the other books, but I think it's a very deliberate thing. Last World Series ball. Now meaningless since humans don't need to achieve anything if superheroes can. Always bail them out. Yeah, it's like a world. Was it a world with a Superman in it? Who needs anything else? And if you do have a godlike being, don't you just sort of go, well, God's in charge, just he knows what to do. I'll just go with the flow. Cynthia saying, what secret thoughts would Moneo want to keep from Shanna? Perhaps his own test when he learns of the golden path. I get the sense that Moneo is concerned a bit with people being able to read his thoughts. I think the God Emperor, possibly it's a hangover from that with Shanna, who's his daughter. But it's a good point. The question I was wondering, Cynthia, is can she read his thoughts, or is it simply that she's so adept that we generally get that when people are accused of mind reading in this, there are no telepaths, or are there? With Leto the Second, that's an interesting question. But it's often the put that it's not telepathy; it's simply training and being an acute observer, noticing all the little details and the minutiae of a person that allows you to work them out. So it's perhaps that. What would he want to keep from her? I think, yeah, as you say, perhaps his own test, the nature of the test, though I think they're different. I don't know. It's an interesting question because Moneo hasn't quite figured things out, and it's with the God Emperor always kind of seemingly to explain to him. There's still a sense that Moneo doesn't know what's going on. In fact, we're going to get that in this chapter, aren't we? And Chai was saying, remember, Leto self-refers as a predator. He does indeed, which is why at the very beginning of this chapter, pardon me, when he describes Shanna, when she was a child, she watched me. Remember? When she thought I was not aware, Shanna watched me like the desert hawk, which circles above the lair of its prey. You yourself mentioned it. This bit seems to go beyond Moneo, by the way, because we go straight to why are we stopping. But I wrote next that she is a predator. And I think that's why the interest in her there, that as much as we get the sense of rebellion, she's watching the God Emperor. Predators have eyes in front of their heads so they can better hunt their prey. So he is indeed a predator. That makes me think, what about Shanna? And to a degree, what about Moneo? There's a question about Moneo in this chapter that I'll ask it whenever we get there. See what you think. So we have do not be angry, Lord. Once more Leto peered ahead. This necessary exposure to the open air, the long and stately journey with all of its ritual requirements to reassure the fish speakers, all of it troubled Leto. And now another petition, something else to bother him. And the terms there, ritual requirements to reassure, we're never getting far away from rite and ritual, are we? Idaho strode forward to stop directly behind Moneo. There was a sense of menace about Idaho's movements. Surely not this soon, Leto thought. This is Idaho here. Why are we stopping, my lord? Idaho asked. I often stop here, Leto said. Sorry, really shouldn't jump ahead there quickly. Just the surely not this soon. That needs a bit of a comment. There's an expectation. Oh goodness, that the Duncans will turn. Isn't there? Again, that surely not this soon. What's the sense of menace about him? He's not Happy Bunny, is he? Why are we stopping, my lord? Idaho asked. I often stop here, Leto said. It was true. He turned and looked beyond the ferry bridge. The way twisted downward out of the canyon heights into the forbidden forest and thence through fields beside the river. Leto had often stopped here to watch the sunrise. There was something about this morning, though. The sun striking across the familiar vista, something which stirred old memories. I thought that was very interesting, by the way. Of all the things that we've actually read in this chapter, it's a little thing. I often stop here, Leto said, and it's the statement that follows it. it was true. Okay. It was true. Why do we need to know that it was true here? That it's a true statement. Honest, it really is. And the suggestion to me by putting those three words there, it was true, is that it's a flag, isn't it? It should suggest to us that a lot of what we've heard so far, I think anyway, has not been true. But this thing is true. This thing that we're told he often stops here, this little insignificant thing, turns out it was true. It's a bit of emphasis for the reader that I thought was unusual. I like that. Turned and looked beyond the ferry bridge, the way twisted downward out of the canyon heights into the forbidden forest, and then through the fields beside the river. Leto had often stopped here to watch the sunrise. There was something about this morning, though, the sun striking across the familiar vista, something which stirred old memories. Here we go. The fields of the royal plantations reached outward beyond the forest, and when the sun lifted over the far curve of land, it beamed glowing gold across grain rippling in the fields. The grain reminded Leto of sand, of sweeping dunes which once had marched across this very ground. Sweeping dunes that had marched and will march once more. Of all the things that you could use about dunes, of all the terms to describe them, marching is an interesting one. I wouldn't say that sand dunes, I wouldn't use that they march, but I think it's an obvious reference to Deserts on the March by Paul Bigelow Sears. It's that kind of language. It's just the word march there, just the fact that it was used twice just kind of made me think of that, Carlos is saying Duncans will always rebel against tyranny eventually. And there's Carlos saying, hey Doc, everyone's sorry I'm late. No worries, Carlos, glad to have you here as always. We're not too far in, it's not a big chapter, nothing particularly major. But yes, indeed, the Duncans always rebel against tyranny. Surely not this soon. And it's not this soon. This Duncan seems to be a bit different. The question is why? So far we've got possibly because he feels threatened, but he's going about his job anyway. The grain was not quite the bright silica amber of his remembered desert. Leto looked back at the cliff-enclosed distances of his Sarir, his sanctuary of the past. The colors were distinctly different. All the same, when he looked once more toward Festival City, he felt an ache where his many hearts once more were reforming in their slow transformation towards something profoundly alien. What's going on with his hearts? We wonder, they're reforming. There's something going on there. Some kind of change or transition. Hearts. I think, is this the first time we get reference to the fact that he's got many hearts? He felt an ache where his many hearts once more were reforming in their slow transformation towards something profoundly alien. What is that? Who knows? I think we've a bit of an idea. Sanctuary of the past. The past seems to be a thing that comforts Leto. We get his thoughts here. What is it about this morning that makes me think about my lost humanity? Leto wondered. Of all the royal party, looking at that familiar scene of grain fields and forest, Leto knew that only he still thought of the lush landscape as the Bar Bella Ma, the ocean without water. Bar Bella Ma is an Arabic phrase, and it means river without water. It's look this up. This was kind of interesting. It's a non-existent or dried up river in the Libyan desert. See Friedrich Rolfs and his 1873 to 74 expedition in the Libyan desert. I put see wiki. Friedrich Rolfs, not a particularly nice man by the looks of him. He was a German geographer. For his dates are 1831 to 1896. geographer and explorer. So the breakup of that word, bar is a body of water, bella is without or lacking, and ma is water. So a river without water, this kind of thing. Oh, was I chatting to you about the vanishing lake here the other week? Which is there's a wee place up here actually of a vanishing lake. Ocean without water. A lake without water. That's interesting. Bar bella ma, so a body of water without, yeah, that could go with the vanishing lake. Chaya saying, I think you're right. That's the first mention of multiple hearts in Worms or in Leto. Yeah, I don't think we've heard that before. In fact, I need to colour that in actually just to make sure it's worthy of note. Oh, sorry folks, bear with me a second. Reaching for my box of highlighters here. Many hearts reforming in their slow transformation towards something profoundly alien. I think that's got something to do with Leto's ultimate transformation, I think. There we go. Many hearts. Yeah, we kind of had the idea that even that his brain wasn't really where it was. I think we've had that before. That his brain is like sort of nodal nexus or something like that. Yeah. What are they reforming? What are they transforming into? I thought that this was something to do with, again, spoiler alert, if you like, towards the end, the ultimate fate of Leto. The hearts reforming and transforming into something profoundly alien. Could that be the new sand trout? The other thing we just mentioned there is that, oddly enough, characters who were considered telepathic but turn out not to be. We have this issue with oh god, what's his name? The Emperor way back in Dune, Ch15. He's a bit curious if somebody could be a telepath, and we don't think that ability exists within in this universe. But we have people here now who are using, well, certainly Leto is using machines that are manipulated by thoughts, and we've seen this with Nayla as well. But yeah, what are the hearts reforming and transforming into that is so profoundly alien? It's an interesting thing. That's just a little drop, isn't it? We haven't heard about this. I was reading about that Friedrich Rolfs there with his quest for the Bar Bella Ma. Let me just see if I can bring this up on Wikipedia. Is it Wikipedia? Friedrich Gerhard Rolfs. Let me see. What was it? 1873. Oh, there we go. With an expedition of. In 1873, with an expedition of 100 camels and 90 men organized under the patronage of Ismail Pasha, the Khedive of Egypt, Rolfs explored the Libyan desert west of the chain of oases which skirt the valley of the Nile, and discovered that the depression called the Bar Bella Ma, or river without water, marked on many maps of the desert at that time, did not exist. Locals of Dakhla Oasis recounted a legend to the explorer Harding King, telling of Rolf's arrival at the oasis in search of treasure at Deir al-Hagar, claiming that he sacrificed one of the black workers of his entourage to the Ifrit guarding the treasure. It is possible that this is a testament to the cruel and exploitive treatment he would exhibit towards his workers. There you go. There's more stuff on him there, but I just thought that's a bit mad, isn't it? Murdering someone to a mythological being that you should know doesn't exist, bizarre. But that's where we get that mention of Bar Bella Ma and its association with Friedrich Rolfs, the German explorer, and murder by the sounds of it as well. That's a thing to have on your, what will you be remembered for? As much as, I went to try and find this place in Libya, I ended up murdering someone to appease a fire demon. so I could get a treasure. It's absolutely horrible. It's funny where little things like words take you in these books, isn't it? Carlos is saying it seems like Leto might sense his own end despite deliberately avoiding using prescience to see his death. Yeah, I think he's got a sense of it. It's just the absolute specifics. Where I was going with geography here is that if he had, Carlos, that's why I was mentioning it today. You joined us a bit late. But just so literally the third paragraph in this chapter, it was barely dawn on the desert road. I've written geography. We jump back to chapter 12 about what the God Emperor said about geography and history, and that people didn't pay much attention to geography, as I recall. Let me just see. The influence of geography on history went mostly unrecognized. Humans tended to look more at the influence of history on geography. I think I said I disagreed with him at that point. But if we think about what's happened here, as we've been reading this chapter, we've been getting a detailed description of the geography in and around Arrakis, from the Citadel down to the Gap and the Festival City on. We've got the Forbidden Forest, we've got the Kind Sea, etc., etc. And the simple fact is, what I was wondering, I don't know if maybe I'm reading too much into this, is that being aware with his prescience at some point that there's a future end to him. What we're getting is the geography of that locus, if you like. Pardon me. And what I've been thinking, Carlos, partly, I don't know if you guys agree, is that why we're paying attention to geography, why we've been told to pay attention to it before, is I think that all of this has been constructed and created to provide the stage, if you see what I mean, for his final act. If you see what I mean, he I'll try not to spoil things, but ultimately we've got the bridges mentioned here, the geography of the Idaho River, etc., etc. And I'm really doing my best not to spoil this, and trying to keep it for then. We've also got the Shanna all-faced myth connected with that. Although in this case it's like what Frank does a lot is he's flipped the myth, if you like, he's inverted it, and I suppose I think it'll be interesting when we get to it. But I got the sense almost that this landscape has been constructed for a reason, and he's reminiscing now about the old landscape. I think. Taking him back a wee bit, feeling maybe it's a bit of a safer time. There's something not right about this day to the God Emperor. Something's not quite right. The Duncan is a bit. There's something not right with him. He's got a sense of he's I think worried, sensing that something's wrong himself. That he's got a sense of menace. But yeah, that's kind of where I was going, but I was trying to incorporate it into the geography, that there is an awareness, though he doesn't like to look too far ahead. I think we've been told back a wee bit that he's not interested too much in the details. He seems to spend more time in the past than in the future, which is the polar opposite of Paul. Paul was trapped in the prescient vision, always stuck in the future, never being in the present, really. With Leto, it's the opposite almost, isn't it? There we go. Bar Bella Ma. I thought that was interesting. The quest for a river that's not there. I was saying we were up having a look at the vanishing lake and wondering if it had vanished the other week when we were up there, and it hadn't. But I must I'm hoping to get up there again soon, so I'll see if I can take a photo of it for you and stick it up on the channel. Where are we? Bar Bella Ma. The ocean without rock. Right. Okay. So this is Leto. Duncan. Leto said, "You see that out there toward the city? That was the Tanzerut, the land of terror." Idaho revealed his surprise in the quick look toward On and the sudden return of his gaze to Leto. I was wondering about this as well. I'm going to have a wee look at. In fact, I'll have to make a wee note to do that for next week. just write it up. We leave a bit of space here. Look up Tanzarift. Which is a term we only came to in Children of Dune. So the thing I'm wondering is, would Idaho have known about it or not? But we'll have to have a wee look into it. I think if it's something from ancient Fremen history and mythology, that kind of thing. We did the work on it anyway, but I don't have it handy. I was just wondering, would he have known about it? Would he have been aware of the Tanzarift? And if not, it's possible that he could have learned about it, I suppose. But the land of terror, Idaho revealed his surprise in the quick look toward On and the sudden return of his gaze to Leto. The Bar Bellama, Leto said. It has been concealed under a carpet of plants for more than 3,000 years. Of all who live on Arrakis today, only the two of us ever saw the desert original. I wrote syntax next to that. And again, is this one of the reasons for the constantly bringing back the Duncan Idahos for reminiscence, to have a shared memory that there's someone in the universe who remembers the things that he does? That would mean that he isn't utterly alone, I suppose, in terms of memory and knowledge and things. It's one of the things why I love doing this book club and this little YouTube channel. Is I think I pointed out to you when I was doing my PhD in June, way back, and nobody had any interest in it whatsoever. No one, and it was just kind of, I wish I had somebody to chat to about this or bounce ideas off, And I always thought it was just me. It's been so nice to do this YouTube channel and meet all of you who are as interested in it as I am. And it's been nice that it just it's rather than doing something so utterly obscure, it's been nice to know that there are people out there that like this, that like these books, that are interested in them as much as I am, that appreciate them and know that there's a worth in taking the books apart to figure them out a bit better, And it's to me, that's been, I've loved that fact. It's given me a community, if you like, that I can belong to. And a set of mutual interests, if you like, to chat with people like yourselves who are from all over the world. It's a great sort of social thing. It's a great it's insightful, and I enjoy it very much. But it's having other people. In fact, if we didn't have an audience, we wouldn't be doing this. It wouldn't exist. But the fact that you have kept coming back week after week for 5 odd years. It amazes me sometimes, to be honest with you, but it's a good thing, and I get that sort of sense sometimes from the God Emperor here. That's why he wants the Duncan around, is to have a shared sense of the past, a shared sense of camaraderie, this kind of thing, someone who you can chat to and just actually relate to, that it's not just all some mythical thing in the past, which kind of makes me wonder about the God Emperor's kind of dishonesty, if you like, a bit, Idaho looked towards On. Where is the shield wall? He asked. Muad'Dib's gap is right there, right where we built the city. So there we go. I think, was it Cynthia asking earlier? That's at Muad'Dib's gap. I think that's where they came through in the Battle of Arrakis. That line of little hills, that was the shield wall. What happened to it? You're standing on it. Idaho looked up at Leto, then down to the roadway and all around. I thought that was interesting. So they've leveled the place in order to, they've taken down most of the shield wall. What's left of it is a small set of hills, and it's been used to build this huge road, which follows these artificial ridges from the city that create a surrounding. We're going to find out later on how high it is. So that's what's happened. Leto has basically taken the shield wall and used it to construct the road, the canyons, etc., that they're walking upon right now. And I'd imagine the city too. Muad'Dib's Gap is right there, right where we built the city. That line of little hills, that was the shield wall. What happened to it? You're standing on it. It's not quite what happened to it, but yeah, I built the road out of it. Idaho looked up at Leto, then down to the roadway and all around. Lord, shall we proceed? Moneo asked. And we get Leto's thoughts here. Moneo, with that clock ticking in his breast, is the goad to duty, Leto thought. There were important visitors to see and other vital matters. Time pressed him, and he did not like it when his God Emperor talked about old times with the Duncans. I thought that was a little bit possessive there, isn't it? Of Moneo, as possibly a little bit of jealousy. He did not like it when his God Emperor, not the God Emperor, it's his God Emperor, talked about the old times with the Duncans. So something possessive there about that statement, I think. And it's possible it's something that he can't share. I don't know. It's maybe just the thing that the Leto and the Duncans have together, that they're a bit of an odd couple. Let me just catch up with your comments a wee thing, folks. Carlos is saying it seems like Leto might sense. Oh, sorry, I read that one before, Carlos. His own end, despite deliberately avoiding using prescience to see his death. Yes. Chai is saying, I thought Tanzareth was far from settled, populated cities on Arrakis. Scorched Earth Policy 6 says, I have listened since the thesis days, and I'm glad that you had a chance to have an interactive book club where we can interact with you. Yeah, it's great. It's I suppose the videos were just way back at the start were just videos, wasn't it? I wasn't chatting with anybody. I'm glad we gave it a go. We just thought we would do a live chat about it sometime. It sort of kicked off from there. But yeah, I'm very glad we got to do this. The things you end up doing in life that you never quite expected or suspected. And I tend to be a go with the flow kind of guy. I've enjoyed this enormously. I don't really know to what use I might put all these notes and stuff. You know, my wife's encouraging me to write something about Dune with it. So who knows? Maybe I'll take all these notebooks. Scorched Earth Policy 6. How many have we got now? We're about to start notebook number 12 of these chunky notebooks here. We're just coming to the end of this one here. This is volume 11 of these notes, and I was considering them in a possible light, a bit like the secret journals of Leto, that maybe I'll bury them somewhere. Get a set of GPS coordinates and let I don't know, who knows. I'm just being whimsical here. I'm not really serious, but yeah, it's I like the interaction. I mean, I can't honestly think that this would be, if I did this on my own, just talking to a camera, it would be vastly diminished. You know, and more than one head's better than one, isn't it? So they said the whole planet seems represented in this chapter, with Leto surveying key landforms and bodies of water from a single vantage point. He sees the whole planet in time and over vast distances. And interesting, I think, as well, we've got, you know, with Idaho there, that particular river, but the Kynes Sea, you know, all of these connections all the way back to Pardo and Leto Kynes' dream. And it's interesting. It's not, by the way, it's the Kynes Sea, isn't it? It's not Leto Kynes or Pardo Kynes. It's just Kynes. Chaya saying, I'm not sure Leto can see his death at all. He knows it must be near water, but he's breeding invisibility to prescience in his program. I'll see if I can figure that out. I'll look back a wee bit. There's something that he said a while back about his end, but that he doesn't look into the details, but he has a sense of it, if you see what I mean. He's a vague idea of it. But yeah, it's the same with Tanzareth. I'm going to have to get the notes out, because I was agreeing with you, Chai. I thought Tanzareth was this kind of like wasteland desert. You know, again, we're not too sure where is he pointing at when he says that's Tanzareth. But I got a sense that these, you see that out there toward the city, that was the Tanza Rift. So I'll have a wee nosy at that for next week and just dig out the notebooks, see what we can find. I've made a wee note here at the end of the chapter to look it up. Yeah. It's very key. The whole planet seems represented in this chapter. We've got all sorts, don't we? That's what I said. That's why I called this chapter really in my own notes. I'm just trotting with Leto just because I've noticed that people are always trotting along instead of dandering along, gandering along, meandering along, all sorts of running, pacing, jogging. But sorry, it's just the use of the word trotted. But I called this chapter geography, based on what the God Emperor had told us about geography before. I was like, why are we getting this geography lesson here? And we're even being told which certain parts of this are artificial, the ridge is artificial, etc. And we get to see him popping back his little bubble too. Sees the whole planet in time and over vast distances. Yeah, it's a good point. As I said, I think it's something to share with the Leto here. Oh, sorry, with Duncan. Apologies. Let's see. So Lord, okay. So Lord, shall we proceed? Moneo asked. Moneo, with that clock ticking in his breast, is the goad to duty. Leto thought there were important visitors to see and other vital matters. Time pressed him, and he did not like it when his God Emperor talked about old times with the Duncans. Leto was suddenly aware that he had paused here far longer than ever before. The courtiers and guards were cold after their run in the morning air, so they've been running. Some had chosen their clothing more for show than protection. And I wrote underneath that, such as a question, such as the fish speakers. If the weather's it's pretty cold, I don't know. I got the sense that they weren't particularly well dressed. An army of women in skin-tight leotards, again, is probably to do with maybe the sexual nature of what was discussed in the previous chapter, but it doesn't sound particularly good. I don't know, soldier equipment, shall we say? It doesn't sound like armor. That kind of thing that you would expect in guards. We get Leto's thoughts. Then again, Leto thought, perhaps show is a form of protection. And I went, it is, isn't it? So we come out of Leto's thoughts there in the Duncan Idaho. There were dunes, Idaho said, stretching for thousands of kilometers. Leto agreed. And again, they're reminiscing together. Moneo's thoughts churned. He was familiar with the God Emperor's reflective mood, but there was a sense of sadness in it this day. Perhaps the recent death of a Duncan. Leto sometimes let important information drop when he was sad. You never questioned the God Emperor's moods or his whims, but sometimes they could be employed. That's interesting. He occasionally drops info when he's sad. Little bits, again, I suppose, insights into the God Emperor from Moneo. It kind of makes me think, okay, is he going to drop some information? Try to keep an eye out for when he's sad. He does seem a rather melancholy chap, doesn't he? Never questioned the Emperor's moods or his whims, but sometimes they could be employed. To what end, I suppose? I guess it's that Moneo is not clued into everything. He hasn't figured it out. And I get the sense very much that Leto doesn't want to tell him. It's about figuring it out for himself, I think. Was it somebody had mentioned it there earlier about, what it was, that Tranniker, wasn't it? Reminds me of the scene in Kingdom Come involving the humans walking by a pawn shop with the last World Series ball, now meaningless, since humans don't need to achieve anything if superheroes can't. Always bail them out. Yeah, it's this. you know, with Moneo, I suppose, with what he knows, what he doesn't know, and we're going to get it reinforced at the end of this chapter. You know, I get the sense that he hasn't been able to figure it out, and that Leto's not going to do it for him. As you say, you know, when it was, if a superhero could just bail him out, and that's not what Leto's about, is it? As Tranica was pointing out, and we're going to see that later on. I suppose with the testing of Shanna, we get Moneo's thoughts here. Shanna will have to be warned, Moneo thought, if the young fool will listen to me. We have a character archetype there of the fool, which I suppose most of our characters go through some stage of foolishness. And for those of you who maybe don't remember, the original title for, was it Dune Messiah? Was it, or was it maybe actually Dune? Was it Full Saint? Let me just check that out. I think it might have been Dune Messiah. Working titles of Messiah included Dune 2, Full Saint. Yeah, there we are. So again, we have this kind of these archetypes, if you like, the young fool, the rebel. I suppose Moneo here's the father figure. We have the worm as the beast, the dragon, if you want, that must be slain. Shanna will have to be warned. Warned about what? Something about the Duncan, possibly Leto. I think it's not made explicitly clear, is it? She was far more of a rebel than he had been. Far more. Leto had tamed his Moneo, sanitized him. Sorry, I'll read that again, that's the wrong word. Leto had tamed his Moneo, sensitized him to the golden path and the rightful duties for which he had been bred. But methods used on Moneo, sorry, I'll read that again. Methods used on a Moneo would not work with Shanna. In his observation of this, Moneo had learned things about his own training which he had never before suspected. I've written underneath this, I'll just read that again. I didn't read it particularly well. Leto had tamed his Moneo, sensitized him to the golden path and the rightful duties for which he had been bred. But methods used on a Moneo, so not methods used on Moneo, but yet methods used on a Moneo, would not work with Shanna. And I don't know if I'm just picking that word out there, but it's the word a. It's a Moneo, not the, not just Moneo. And I've written down underneath this here, what does a Moneo mean? Is there more than one Moneo? Question mark. Have the Moneos been bred? Yeah, well, I suppose I shouldn't be saying have the Moneos. Is there more than one Moneo? In the same way that we have more than one Duncan. I don't know. Possibly it's just maybe somebody with the same name, but it's methods used on a Moneo would not work with Shanna. I thought it was odd. Maybe it's a little fault in the text. Maybe it's just me reading too much into it. Who knows? Yeah, and Leto had tamed his Moneo. Reminds me that if we remember the end of Dune Messiah, sorry, if we remember the end of Children of Dune, apologies, we have this Leto saying, I'll have it, is it tame my Farad'n, I believe. Tell you what, let me see if I can look that up very quickly. It reminded me completely on that. Bear with me a second. Let's see if we can find the book. I've opened the wrong thing. There we go. Ebooks. Come on. Oh, come on, computer. Right. All right. Ebooks. Let me just quickly. Children of Dune. Right. Oh, bear with me a second, folks, just to look this up. There's no tame Fremen. Fremen, yes, it reminded me on way back. Fremen once kept tame eagles as pets, but I'll keep a tame Farad'n. From Children of Dune. And here we have a tamed Moneo, who's a descendant of Farad'n's, isn't he? Just some of the language here. Tamed his Moneo, just like he tamed his Farad'n. We're told that he's been bred for particular duties, and that methods that were used on a Moneo would not work with Shanna, so that they're different enough. But in his observations of this, Moneo had learned things about his own training which he had never before suspected. It's interesting. I don't know, there's little things in this chapter. I don't see any identifiable landmarks, Idaho was saying. Right over there, Leto said, pointing. Where the forest ends, that was the way to splintered rock. Moneo shut out their voices. I'll say that again. Moneo shut out their voices. It was ultimate fascination with the God Emperor, which finally brought me to heel. Leto never ceased to surprise and amaze. He could not be reliably predicted. Moneo glanced at the God Emperor's profile. What has he become? Now, bear with me a second. Just wanted to have a look here. Yeah, Splintered Rock is on our original map of Dune. Near Mount Idaho, just off the shield wall. So we do have, I don't see anything else here really. OH Gap, Splintered Rock is there. Let's see. There, sorry. There we are. That's Splintered Rock there on the map of Arrakis. So it's something that we've got a reference to. Okay. Broken along, Cave of Riches, etc. Yeah, but things like Tanzerhof weren't on here, I think. Weren't ever on here. Stuff from later on. Oh, sorry, hang on. I've lost track of the comments here. Bear with me a second, folks. Chai is saying the series is called Dune, not Atreides. I like that. It's always at root an ecological story of the changing nature of the planet through the millennia and its effects on everyone. It is something I've been pointing out before. The planet's a character. You know, and the changes are subtle, aren't they? I don't know. We've followed these. We're in the book 4. We're saying we have seen them. You know, from this entirely desert world with virtually no water, the changes going on in Dune Messiah, more in Children of Dune, and now we've jumped forward. The planet is almost unrecognizable. Yeah, and you're quite right. It is called Dune, not Atreides. Which I suppose is why ultimately, well, we'll step away a bit from the Atreides, won't we? Though, if I'm not mistaken, is it? I used to always call her Darwe Odrad, but it's Darwe Odradi. Apparently, is how would you put it? A changed form of Atreides, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good point, Chaya, by the way. I like that. It's it's something I often do with books and stuff. I actually think about people never think about titles and stuff. One of my favorite ones for that would be if I'm teaching any students doing any Shakespeare, the one that I always point out to them is The Tempest. You go, what? If anybody's not familiar with The Tempest, the actual storm itself is somewhat. The tempest that happens and the tempest that brings the ship to the island isn't really a magical storm or anything. It's actually Ariel. Ariel is the tempest. and it's him that brings that causes all of that, and then he brings the people from the ship to the island. I often just thought people never consider, whenever, particularly that play, they often don't consider the title. What's it got to do with anything, you know? So they said Leto has multiple hearts and Moneo has a ticking clock of duty instead of a heart. Interesting contrast. Very good. There's something about Moneo that reminds me. It's the point that you just made. Something I was trying to think about how to phrase it. Reminds me on the Clockwork Orange, isn't it? What's been done to Alex DeLarge? You get the sense something similar to Moneo here. This is our rebel. This man's a rebel. He's an Atreides, etc. Yet he's tame. He's been put in his place and knows his place and stays in his place. And as you say, that there's something. Leto has multiple hearts, is lamenting his lost humanity. Does Moneo perhaps understand his loss of perhaps his humanity? Again, considering that almost nobody in these books anymore is human, really, there's nobody much that we can maybe consider baseline human apart from possibly Duncan. China is saying thus focusing on geography, each book makes sense, not just setting a story. Sorry, I was continuing on from your previous comment. It affects on everyone. Thus focusing on, I'll read that again. China said the series is called Dune, not Atreides. It's always at root an ecological story of the changing nature of the planet through the millennia and its effects on everyone. Thus, focusing on geography, each book makes sense, not just setting a story. Big Alaska Joe says, we all thought it was just me, and it feels awesome to know we are not just me at all. That's good to hear. I hope you guys get something out of this as much as I do. That's the main thing, I think, Big Alaska Joe's My Time in the Juniverse by Doc Sloan, A Tale of Worms. Travels with me worms. Oh dear. Yeah. No, I generally hope you do get something out of this. It's if not just a bit of crack and a bit of company in the evening, But yeah, it's I don't know, they're fascinating books. There's just too much in them to be. If you've got a curious mind and you like your sci-fi and you're interested in ecology and all this kind of stuff, you can't really beat the Dune series for just a bit of fun. I think it's a great. Even I was saying I might not read these again, just because of the sheer number of times that I've read them, and I've got lots of other books to get on reading with. But I wouldn't altogether rule it out, and it's possible I might have to read Dune again. I'll not say why. Maybe we'll chat about it another time. Let's see. Where do we get to? Yes, right over there, Leto said, pointing where the forest ends. That was the way to Splintered Rock. Oh, I read through that wee bit. Sorry. Right. Moneo shut out their voices. It was ultimate fascination with the God Emperor, which finally brought me to heel. Leto never ceased to surprise and amaze. He could not be reliably predicted. Moneo glanced at the God Emperor's profile. What has he become? I got the sense from that, by the way, is that what broke Moneo out of his rebellion is possibly in a universe that, for Leto II, that everything seems stagnant and boring, and know everything. The kind of God problems that you might have. But the flip side of that is that Moneo actually finds the God Emperor fascinating, interesting. Ultimate fascination. He never ceased to surprise and amaze. If you were in a boring universe that had previously been a very violent universe, I don't see why hanging around with the God Emperor might be that bad a thing, to be honest with you. At least he wouldn't be dull. As part of his early duties, Moneo had studied the Citadel's private records, the historical accounts of Leto's transformation. But symbiosis with Sandtrout remained a mystery, which even Leto's own words could not dispel. If the accounts were to be believed, the Sandtrout's skin made his body almost invulnerable to time and violence. The great body's ribbed core could even absorb Lasgon bursts. Sorry. The great body's ribbed core could even absorb the last gun bursts. So I thought that was interesting because we've talked about history before with Moneo, and that he studied the Citadel's private records, the historical accounts of Leto's transformation. And then we get this phrase just below it, but symbiosis with Sandtrite remained a mystery which even Leto's own words could not dispel. So once again, I get the sense that the Citadel's private records, these historical accounts, pardon me, are actually Leto's own words. And even those words can't dispel what Moneo wonders about the nature of the worm, the symbiosis. If the accounts were to be believed, the Sandtrite skin made his body almost invulnerable to time and violence, almost being the word there. The great body's ribbed core could even absorb last gun bursts. We get Moneo's thoughts again. First the Sandtrite, then the worm, all part of the great cycle which has produced melange. That cycle lay within the God Emperor, marking time. Again, the word cycle there is important, I think. If it is cyclical, then things will happen again. Sandtrite to worm, possibly ultimately back to some form of Sandtrite again. I know that, but I'm not wanting to say it out loud. Leto says, let us proceed, Leto said. Moneo realized that he had missed something. He came out of his reverie and looked at a smiling Duncan Idaho. So he's been lost in his own thoughts here. We used to call that wool gathering, Leto said. It's a word Frank's very fond of. I'm sorry, Lord, Moneo said. You were wool gathering, but it's all right. And we get Moneo's thoughts again here. His mood's improved, Moneo thought. I can thank the Duncan for that, I think. I think is a bit unsure at the end of that, isn't it? Leto adjusted his position on the cart, closed part of the bubble cover, and left only his head free. The cart crunched over small rocks on the roadbed as Leto activated it. Idaho took up position at Moneo's shoulder and trotted alongside him. It's just the word trotted, I think, in this chapter is a bit funny. We've heard it before as well. There are floater bulbs under that cart, but he uses the wheels, Idaho said. Why is that? It pleases the Lord Leto to use wheels instead of anti-gravity. What makes the thing go? How does he steer it? Have you asked him? I haven't had the opportunity. The royal cart is of Ixian manufacture. What does that mean? It is said that the Lord Leto activates his cart and steers it just by thinking in a particular way. So again, some sort of telepathic control, mental control. Again, all about devices that avoid the prescriptions of the Great Convention. Thinking machines. Possibly are machines that you think at. Don't you know, questions such as this do not please him. We get Moneo's thoughts again here. Even to his intimates, Moneo thought, the God Emperor remains a mystery. Moneo, Leto called. You had better return to your guards, Moneo said, gesturing to Idaho to fall back. I'd rather be out in front with them, Idaho said. The Lord Leto does not want that. Now go back. Moneo hurried to place himself close beside Leto's face, noting that Idaho was falling back through the courtiers to the rear ring of guards. Leto looked down at Moneo. I thought you handled that very well, Moneo. Thank you, Lord. Do you know why the Duncans want to be out in front? Certainly, Lord. It's where your guard should be. And this one senses danger. I don't understand you, Lord. I cannot understand why you do these things. That's true, Moneo. And that's the end of our chapter, folks. I've written something just to hear at the end of it that what's up with Moneo is I've written here, Moneo reminds me of Rogue. And Rogue, for anybody who doesn't know it, is there's an audiobook of it on the channel. One of possibly it's oh, I don't know if it's my favorite short story of all time, but it's one of them. It's a hard to sort of pick things out like that, but it's definitely one of my all-time favorites. Rogue is a science fiction story by Philip K. Dick, and it's the sort of first science fiction story where Philip K. Dick sort of went, this is what I'm about, this is how I'm going to write, this is what I do in terms of themes, especially, and what is the nature of reality, what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to be sentient, this kind of thing. Rogue is about a dog that views the trash men that come to pick up its rubbish at its house every week as aliens. If you like, who turn up in their spaceship to take away its owner's precious rubbish. And the story's about how the dog goes mad, basically, and just doesn't get it. This is my owner's things, and he puts it out, and then these people in the big metal van come and try and steal it every week, and I have to protect my owner's stuff. So it's the dog not being able to deal with the reality of it, if you like, the paradox of it. And I thought that this reminds me, Moneo here reminds me on that story. What is it he doesn't understand? The point is this, that the guards should be out in front. That's why the Duncan wants to be out in front. It's where your guards should be. Yeah, in fact, the guards should be all around him. This one senses danger. I don't understand you, Lord. I cannot understand why you do these things. That's true, Moneo. You don't get it. And again, he's not explaining it for him. He's not giving him an easy way out. He could do, and he doesn't. And it's the same thing as it applies to us as the reader. What's this about? It's I suppose it's paradox in some ways, isn't it? That the God Emperor does things that don't seem quite logical, such as having his guards walk behind him, especially when the leader of those guards senses danger, possibly ahead. That's what Moneo doesn't get, I think. And Leto has his own reasons for doing it, possibly because of prescience, but he's not about to explain them to Moneo, and Moneo, unfortunately, is forced to deal with the fact that he doesn't understand his Lord and Master. And it's possibly we get a little sense of jealousy, a little sense of possessiveness, if you like, of Leto by Moneo in this chapter, and also the sense about warning his daughter. And we're not too sure about who he's going to warn the daughter about. Is it Duncan or Leto? You know, so a little bit of the paradox there, I think, within the chapter. I really enjoyed this chapter. I thought it was a good one. It doesn't seem to have much going on in it, but I think that's very not true. I think there's quite a bit in here. As I said, the geography, I don't think we would even maybe pay attention to it that much if we hadn't been told to by the God Emperor 3 chapters back, you know. And it's another one of those things that these wee notes help with, actually, whenever things like this do occur, which I tend to jump back to notebooks. If there's something that refers back to way back when, I'll go get that notebook and write it in, so they have a sort of self-referencing, if you like, within the notebooks. Like that wee one there today, just we had C chapter 12, note 13, and that's notes in my wee book, etc., etc. Yeah, but it's an interesting little chapter, very much geography heavy, a little bit of mystery to it, and we kind of have Duncan, Leto, and Moneo kind of out in the world operating together, whereas before we had Duncan and Leto with a little bit of, mainly the chapters that we had before were Duncan and Leto, and then Duncan and Moneo. Here we've got the 3 of them interacting, fish speakers and courtiers and all. And it's I don't know, Moneo is becoming a little bit interesting. It seems that possibly some confusion with his character. He doesn't really know what's going on. There might be a little bit of jealousy with him. He seems a little bit possessive of his god emperor and fearful for his daughter as well. So we certainly get this mixture of emotions from Moneo in this chapter. Though we get a little bit of sense of sadness and reminiscence from the god emperor, and possibly a little bit of something similar from Duncan, but a little bit of confusion perhaps about a landscape that should be familiar to him. It's the same with us as the reader, I suppose, and this is one of the ways that Frank does this, is that the differences in the landscape being explained and pointed out to Duncan are also being pointed out to us, the reader. And as I said, I don't know, let me see if I can find it here, but I did get a wee map. Certain things tend not to be too difficult to find. There it is. That was a little bit there, long time ago, just at the start of the book. We had a little bit of a map there. Last Desert, the Sewer, the Citadel, Forbidden Forest, Orchards, Idaho River. We didn't get as far as the Kind Sea in that map, but that was just from the descriptions in the book. So I'll see if we can scribble something else down just for my own benefit. Tend to be useful whenever we're referring to these things. But there we go. That's another chapter done, folks. We're doing well. 15 in. Where are we at now in my copy? Let's see. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, we've crossed over 100 page 100 mark. We're on a page 107. We've got 420 and 420 in this copy. Excellent. So there we go. My Time in the Universe by Doc Sloan, A Tale of Worms. I've spent far too much time in this universe, Baked Alaska Joe. Far too much time. In fact, here I started the PhD in 2006. I know, in 2006. And I first applied for it in 2004, didn't get it. 2005, didn't get it. 2006, didn't get it. So yeah, it's pretty much been 22 years of mucking around in Frank Herbert's Dune universe. You could argue, by the way, that this is the longest Viva defense of a PhD ever. Oh dear. But yeah, I've got some plans for some new stuff. It's about finding time, really, and hopefully we'll have. I think we've got quite a chunky chapter ahead of us for next week. Let me just have a wee quick look. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, it's not that bad actually. Sometimes I miss the way the epigraphs work, and these copies of the books are a bit different. That's my next chapter there. Not that bad at all. Another about the same size as this one, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 pages for our next chapter, which means hopefully I will have time to finish the editing of the Batracho Myomachia and get that up for you. I've done I've recorded a poetic version of Chapman's translation of Batracho Myomachia. Not an easy thing to get a hold of. And it's just interesting, I think, maybe if some of you aren't familiar with this, if you get to have a listen or read to it, you'll get this is a children's version of the Iliad, and you'll not believe how violent it is. And that's kind of one of the points. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. Actually, we were talking about people going to war and all the generations of people who have been to war telling other people that you shouldn't ever go to war, and why do we keep doing it? But there's Chaya saying good night all. Thank you, Doc. Thank you very much, Chaya. I hope you're on the mend, by the way, and keeping safe. And yeah, I'm going to wrap up tonight too, folks, because I've got an early start at the doctor's. So I'll just say once again, you can hopefully join me for chapter 16 next week on Thursday at 10 p.m. GMT +1 for chapter 16 of God Emperor of Dune. Which I'm looking forward to, and hopefully maybe by then we might have our wee audio book up. So in the meantime, I'm going to say goodnight. There's Cynthia saying, I've read the Dune series every few years since I was a kid. Doing a close reading in a group has been a great experience. Dangerously fascinating, but it won't bring me to heel. Laughing out loud. Very good, Cynthia. I like that. it's been that for me too. It has been a great experience. I've never done this with them. The only time I've ever done a close reading like this was in school, with my English teacher. Who would that been? It would have been Mrs. Nelson. She would have been the one that taught us how to do this, and I had to do this for Hamlet, which is why I know my Hamlet quite well. But that was a long time ago. That was when I was 17, 18. But yes, indeed. I've managed to hit into them every few years. I don't know. I think this is my 14th, I think, read of all 6 books, because yeah, I've worked out I read them 3 times for each of these episodes. So, but I think at the very least with Dune, yeah, I must be up to about 14 times I've read it now. I think I kind of have lost touch. It's around that anyway. But there we go. But I hope you're all enjoying it anyway. And God Emperor is a fascinating book. It really is. It's Julian was having a chat with me there the other day, saying I have to hit the esoteric stuff soon. As I always try to hit these things. I'm not too sure where it is. I'll have to have a run ahead. Pardon me. And see where it's best to kind of bring that in. But I'll have to do my reading on it, because I'm no expert at all, you know. There we go. Well, listen, folks, thank you very much as always. I hope you have enjoyed it. It's been great crack. It just leaves me to say good night to everybody. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you all real soon next week at 10 p.m. GMT +1 for chapter 16 of God Emperor of Dune. There we go, folks. In the meantime, look after yourselves. Be safe. Be sweet. Don't worry about it. And I'll see you all real soon. Take care and good night. All the best. Ba da 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 ba 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 ba.